Before the 1920s, America was not devastated by the war like Europe, because America wasn't on the war front. But after the war, there was a new war. America banned and prohibited alcohol. It started in the late 1919 when the Volstead Act was passed. This banned production and drinking alcohol in the country, with a couple of exceptions.
The Roaring Twenties was an era which America grew socially and culturally. Lifestyles changed significantly and everything seemed great at the moment. Then the Volstead Act took place and alcohol became the new drug.
During the 1920s, people found it hard to find a job and provide food or clothes for their family. Many people had turned to join the mafia to make easy money. When the 19th Amendments were passed, people who enjoyed having a drink became a criminal, and many people had to hide their alcohol supplies.
Alcohol was seen as the devil's juice, or drink, and by banning alcohol, the government thought it would improve the American way of life and health. After the Prohibition, there was an explosive growth in the legal saloons and bars. The government thought that by ending alcohol production it would lower crime and violence rates by a lot, but it ended up increasing crime and violence.
After the Prohibition was announced, a new order in the police department rose, and their job was to bust the people holding any alcohol. Rich people hid their booze collection, while the working class only had a selected few. A new breed rose too. Seeing the prohibition as an economic opportunity, the rise of gangsters rose too, seeing the high demand for alcohol.
The gangsters saw the high demand for alcohol and created systems in smuggling businesses. They hired people to work in distilleries in the Caribbean and Canada. After the drinks were made, they would smuggle them into America with cargo ranging from 10 bottles to 2,000 bottles. They would get caught, but the cops were underpaid, so they would sometimes get lucky and bribe the authorities.
Gangsters now ran the city because they had access to booze, but there were other alternative ways. One was through doctors, as whiskey was still used as medicine, and soon there became an increase of patients that needed whiskey. Another way to access booze was to make it. This would require a distillery in your basement, and if you were caught, the penalties would be severe.
The Prohibition made local and chain bars go out of business because they became obsolete. So the gangsters make speakeasies, or basically known as underground bars. Gangsters would put the booze in these bars and sell them to people that knew these new places. The average gangster would earn a lot of money because of the Prohibition, so a law that the authorities placed made the gangsters' business flourish. One of the most notorious gangsters was Al Capone, and he too took place in the booze industry. By 1925, there was 30,000 to 100,000 speakeasies running in New York. Gangsters that avoided the law by bribing the corrupted cops mostly ran them. Alcohol was coming into the country through any means of transportation. The Prohibition only made gangsters richer and money was circulated heavily. This increased the economy of America and soon became a very rich country, with inventions and lifestyles being improved daily. People thought the successful 9-year period of wealth and excess would continue for a long time, but this was abruptly stopped. Through October 24th to October 29 in 1929, there was a huge downfall on Wall Street. It crashed economically. This put millions out of jobs and America in a decline. The gangster and the Prohibition Act took no interest in this, as it was an underground deal. The customers were affected and had no more money to spend. After the crash of Wall Street, booze was still circulating around the speakeasies, and the gangsters lived a rich life. Even though the crash put the Roaring Twenties to a halt, gangsters still ran rich. It was mid-1933 when their time was up. The Cullen-Harrison Act took place and alcohol was legal again. Gangsters lost their whole business as bars began to open up and sell drinks for lower prices than the speakeasies sold them for. Gangsters lost everything and fell off their vast empire that relied on the black market. After the Harrison-Cullen Act, alcohol ran freely through America. It became legal again, everyone started buying from the bars and liquor stores that provided these beverages. Soon there was a celebration, and alcohol was brought back into America.